Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished representatives, allow me first of all to congratulate you, Mr. Philemon Yang, on your election as President of the 79th session of the UN General Assembly. I am confident that your able stewardship will lead this session to an excellent fruition. Mr. President, the current session of the UNGA is convened at a time when the existence and development of humanity is faced with unprecedented serious crises and challenges. Armed conflicts and bloodshed continue unabated in various parts of the world, with the situation in Gaza still going on for almost a year, taking the lives of the tens of thousands of innocent civilians and creating the most appalling humanitarian crisis since the World War II. To make matters worse, ever-worsening abnormal weather conditions like extreme high temperature, drought, torrential rain, and flood cause massive human and material losses, coupled with such problems as food and energy crisis, unemployment, and poverty and social inequality. In addition, confrontation, bloc forming, and unilateralism prevail over the spirit of cooperation, unity, and multilateralism, which run through the UN Charter, thus creating obstacles to tiding of international crisis. Therefore, I expect that this general debate, true to its theme and spirit, will serve as a significant occasion in overcoming the challenges and crises threatening humanity's existence and development, defending the UN-centered multilateral system, and promoting peace and advancement of the present and future generations. Mr. President, I consider it important for each and every UN member state to fully discharge its responsibility with a view to overcoming present crises and promoting social progress and better standards of living as stated in the UN Charter. From this viewpoint, I'd like to outline the principled stand of the DPRK government and its efforts directed to achieving socio-economic development, defending regional peace and stability, and realizing international justice. Today, the world is faced with challenges with no exception to the DPRK as well. However, valuable successes are being recorded in the socio-economic field, thanks to the correct line of the government and its steady implementation. First, the DPRK government puts it as the primary state policy to keep supplying the children under school age with dairy products and provide school children with essential stationery at the state's expense. As a result of the strenuous execution of the policy, we witness continued improvement in the quality of child care and education. We also find an outcome of our effort to achieve sustainable development of the national economy. The trend of growth continues in various fields, such as light industry and agriculture, and remarkable successes are registered in promoting the welfare of the people, including the work to provide all residents of both urban and rural areas with new dwelling houses free of charge. In particular, the DPRK government newly adopted the policy for regional development and is paying primary attention to its practical implementation. The DPRK government's regional development policy aims to effect epoch-making enhancement in socio-economic, material, and cultural standards on a nationwide scale by bridging the gap between the capital and provincial cities, between urban and rural areas, and develop all sectors and regions of the country in a balanced and simultaneous way within a 10-year time frame. This will be an effective contribution of the DPRK to the attainment of the SDGs on achieving sustainable development for everyone, ensuring no one is left behind. The DPRK's regional development policy is firmly assured of its feasibility as it is based on scientific accuracy and justness. In 10 years' time, the world will witness a completely changed development of the DPRK. Mr. President, aforementioned work for socio-economic development in the DPRK is never done in a peaceful and normal security environment. Peaceful and stable external environment is very dear to us who aspire to overall development and prosperity of the state. And yet, the security threat forced upon us from the outside is all the more increasing with the passage of time. Last year, I stated on this podium that the situation on the Korean Peninsula was nearing to the brink of a nuclear conflict. 1 year has passed since then. Now the security landscape of the Korean Peninsula is quite different from that time and becoming much more acute. From the beginning of this year, the U.S. and its allies have staged joint military exercises one after another with various code names such as Freedom Shield, Freedom Edge, and Combined Air Drill in the vicinity of the DPRK, thus heightening military tension and hostile atmosphere in the region. Much more serious is the fact that the anti-DPRK nuclear war machine, Nuclear Consultative Group, engineered by the US and ROK last year, is now in full operation, and simulation nuclear war drills are conducted to put into practice an actual attempt to use nuclear weapons against the DPRK. Joining here are the member states of NATO, which is an outside force beyond the region, and an exclusive military bloc. They are strengthening military cooperation with the US and ROK, abusing the signboard of a UN command, which should have been dismantled decades ago in accordance with the UNGA resolution. They are stirring up military confrontation still further by deploying warships and aircraft in the hotspot region of the Korean Peninsula. Such being the case, they blame us for threatening them and the peace and stability of the region and beyond with the nuclear weapons. Then who had developed and used nuclear weapons against humanity for the first time in history? Who has introduced nuclear weapons into the Korean Peninsula in the last century and posed nuclear threat to the DPRK over the century? Who on earth is talking unhesitatingly about the end of regime of a sovereign state and maintaining first use of nuclear weapons against the DPRK as its national policy? It is not that the DPRK's position of nuclear weapons makes the U.S. hostile towards us. The truth is that the U.S. hostility and nuclear threat to the DPRK for over 70 years compelled us to make a historic decision to possess nuclear weapons. Our nuclear weapons were just made and exist to defend ourselves. As such, any talk about our nuclear threat only proves a conceived hostility towards the DPRK. The security environment of the Korean Peninsula is bound to be intricately complicated through to the next generation as well, unless the U.S. and its followers change their confrontational and aggressive nature. Under such circumstances, it is an indispensable exercise of sovereign rights for the DPRK to maintain powerful strength capable of defending national security interests and guaranteeing peaceful development. The situation on the Korean Peninsula has not entered into war, even though it is fraught with extreme tension. It is totally attributable to our country's powerful war deterrence, which helps stave off threat of aggression and keep the balance of power in the region. Therefore, we continue to increase our war deterrence capabilities, not only from our obligation to ensure national security, but also from our mission to maintain peace and security in the region and beyond. Comrade Kim Jong-un, president of the State Affairs of the DPRK, said that we can choose either dialogue or confrontation, but we should go further in getting ourselves fully prepared for confrontation. This is the review and conclusion drawn from the 30-year-long DPRK-US relations, he said. When it comes to the right to self-defense, a legitimate right of a sovereign state, we will never go back to the point in the far-off past. When it comes to the national prestige, we will never bargain over it with anyone, for it was gained through the bloody struggle of the entire Korean people. Whoever takes office in the United States, we will only deal with the state entity called the U.S., not the mere administration. Likewise, any U.S. administration will have to face the DPRK, which is different from what the U.S. used to think. Mr. President, It is the invariable external policy of the DPRK government to champion justice and peace, aspire after progress and development, and promote friendship and solidarity. This is also the idea running through the UN Charter. From this viewpoint, the DPRK government stands strongly against the acts of dividing international political arena into two camps with unlawful double standards, giving precedence to their hegemonic interests and disturbing peace and stability. At present, many factors obstruct attainment of the SDGs set forth by the UN. The most critical among them are the high-handedness, arbitrariness, and double standards of the US and certain UN member states. Since October last year, the indiscriminate massacre by Israeli authorities has claimed more than 40,000 Palestinian civilian lives in Gaza Strip, including many children and women, and thus exposed a nation to a complete extinction. The UN exists to prevent the recurrence of the scourge of war that had inflicted untold sufferings to mankind. It is really shameful and deplorable that such act against humanity has persisted for 1 year. It is highly imaginable that one state is immune to any censure and sanction, even after committing such a horrible massacre. This is entirely due to the patronage of the US, a permanent member of the UN Security Council. The US has vetoed UNSC resolutions on bringing peace to the Middle East on as many as 5 occasions, overriding the wishes of the international community to see the ethnic cleansing stopped by its ally. This is how the US has discredited the authority of the UN and incited crime against humanity. This notwithstanding, the US is branding as a threat and provocation the legitimate exercise of the right to self-defense by a sovereign state, which did not do any harm to anyone.
모독당하고 있는 데 대하여 다시 한번 강력한 우려를 표시하며 규탄합니다.
Of a single arrogant permanent member state of the UN Security Council. I also express deep condolences to the Palestinian victims of the Israeli genocide and their bereaved families, and extended unchanged support and solidarity to the Syrian people in their struggle to regain the occupied Golan Heights and safeguard territorial integrity. Mr. President, the reform of the present global governance regime should be oriented to realizing impartiality, equity, and justice. The United Nations will regain its sacred image only when it strictly adheres to the principles of sovereign equality, non-interference in internal affairs, impartiality, and objectivity, and eliminates high-handedness and arbitrariness, as well as biased double standards practices in all activities in conformity with the purposes and principles enshrined in the UN Charter. Mr. President, a just, peaceful, and prosperous world remains the desire of the DPRK as ever. It is the consistent stand of the DPRK government to make positive efforts with independence against imperialism as its immutable first national policy to realize international justice based on the respect for sovereignty, non-interference in internal affairs, equality, and mutual benefit, and establish a new international order. The DPRK will in the future too cooperate with all the countries and nations which oppose and reject aggression, interference, domination, and subordination, and aspire to independence and justice, transcending differences in ideals and systems. We will also develop diversified exchanges and cooperation with the countries that respect our country and take a friendly attitude to us. Thank you.